Welcome. I hope all of you are keeping safe, taking care of yourselves and your health. Be safe. Let's continue with the discussion that we start the next talk in this series that looks at healthcare research in India. In this session, I would like to bring in an issue of scientific temper and how we often lose our temper over the lack of scientific temper. And on the other hand, lose our temper over people using scientific temper as well. So it's an interesting term, scientific temper. It leads to a lot of good temper and bad temper, scientific temper. And the reason I'm looking at that is because in the general discussion on healthcare research in India, two factors usually come up. One is the skill of the researcher or the human resources that are available for research, their skills and their capabilities. And the second, or possibly the first factor that comes up, is the lack of infrastructure or resources to do good research in India. And so any discussion that comes around healthcare research in India and about why we don't have good studies or why we don't have large studies like some of the Caucasian countries have, usually ends up with a discussion on the lack of skilled manpower in terms of numbers, in terms of skill, as well as the lack of opportunities and the lack of resources that people have to do research in India. Those are fair enough points. Add to that the factor that many doctors are overworked. We have a suboptimal doctor to population ratio. So the number of patients that a doctor has to see can be high. And then there is not much time that one can devote after all that to do some research. And that's another argument that's put forward. This huge patient load is an interesting argument because it reduces the time that apparently reduces the time that you can allot or allocate for healthcare research. On the other hand, the high patient load is an opportunity because it gives you a lot of things that you can explore and you can study. So it's a double-edged sword. It can go this way, it can go that way. Let's take a step back and look at something that's beyond the research infrastructure. So part of the reason why we feel that there is not much time to devote for research is because we have brought in a dichotomy between the clinical services that we provide and clinical research, or even if it's public health services that we provide and public health research. In the first talk, I mentioned that research is a search for something. It's an evaluation of a fact, of a process, of a result, of something. And you're checking to see if that's holding good. And you'll recheck it again to see if it's still holding good. And if it's changing, then you will look at why it's changed, what changes happened, and whether that change is valid. And the process continues. So it's not a dead end. It's a continuous process. It's a continuous process in clinical care. It's a continuous process in public health care, where evaluation has to and must be a constant factor throughout the process. So the dichotomy between what we call as regular clinical services, regular public health services and research has led to a feeling that both are not simultaneous, both are not done simultaneously, and hence both have to be allocated time different. Both have to be allocated different times, and then time becomes a problem because there are only 24 hours in a day and you have to fit everything into that. Scientific temper becomes important here. The scientific temper, if we look at it, is a process of questioning something, not just accepting something because it's been told to you, questioning something, looking at it, evaluating it, looking at it with logic, with reason, critical thinking, evaluating it applying it, again looking at it, again reevaluating. So it's a process that goes on, and that process is key to research. One thing that we have to consider very carefully is, are we equipping ourselves with the tools to develop scientific temper? That's an interesting question that we have to really step back and look at. Now, India is one of the unique countries that has in its constitution Article 51A, subsection H, that states that scientific temper must be, every citizen must develop a sense of scientific temper. One of the very few countries, possibly the only country that has it in its written constitution. And when we look at scientific temper, developing scientific temper, let's look at the process of research that happens now in healthcare. And the process of research is mainly confined to a postgraduate student who starts, the initiation starts with a postgraduate student who has to do a mandatory dissertation. Rarely, it's improving now as more grants are coming. Rarely you find undergraduate students writing grants to do small studies, research studies. And that's because the Indian Council of Medical Research and similar organizations have introduced a program for that. Post your post-graduation, after your post-graduation, you do research only if you are in a big institute or in a research-oriented setup. Otherwise, it's getting back to the mundane duties of the routines of clinical practice and research, etc. So we are expecting, or we are starting a switch or putting the switch on during the post-graduation time, telling that do this dissertation, and after which nothing much happens in terms of building research skills. We need to look at whether this situation is ideal. Does this situation in any way help to improve the capabilities of the healthcare professionals to engage in meaningful research? Does it give them the skills to improve their scientific temper throughout their lifetime? And that's a question that we have to look at very seriously. There are three aspects with scientific temper that I think is very, very, very important. And those are three aspects that our education system sort of dismisses of. One is the power of observation. We are a fact-filled education system. From the time we get into school, we're filled with facts. Our examination system focuses more on our ability to remember and vomit out facts rather than their application, rather than the thought processes behind it. If you go to any school system, if you go to most school systems, let me be charitable, if you go to most school systems and we ask, and we look at the students there, and we look at the curriculum there, there's a lot of facts that is true. The understanding of how those facts develop, understanding of why those facts have to be examined and assessed, the knowledge that those facts can be dynamic and can change is something that is not instilled, routine. So when we then get into our professional courses, we should not really expect that students will be in that mode to question. So the power of observation. We spend so much time filling facts, looking at facts, that our power to sit back, reflect, and observe what's going on around us, observe what is in nature, to observe a phenomenon that's happening is not common. and the power of observation reduces. Now, a key aspect of any research is the power of observation. You have to be observing something for quite some period of time for you to realize that those things that are happening are normal. And it's only when you observe for a period of time and you see that something is normal that you're then able to make out what is abnormal. So if you don't have a power of observation, or if you don't build a power of observation, it's very difficult to make out what is abnormal. Other than when a senior or someone else tells you that this is abnormal, and you look at it and say, well, this is abnormal. And you store it in your memory that this is abnormal, but you're not improving your powers of observation. Now, the powers of observation are very, very, very important. They are possibly the first step in any research that is undertaken. The first skill that you have to develop is the power of observation. As you observe, you come up with a lot of questions. We were born curious, and over a period of time, the curiosity was kicked and beaten out of us. But we were born curious. We look at things and then we ask questions. Why is this so? Why is it not like that? How is this like this? What is happening? A lot of questions. And as you develop the pattern of asking questions, you tend to ask people questions. So you try to find the answers from somewhere. Now that the internet is there, it's easier to find the answers from the internet than to ask people, but still. And then comes the third part of the scientific temper, developing a scientific temper, the ability to listen. Now, the ability to listen is at both ends. The questioner, the person who is hearing the question, must listen to the question. And the questioner must be open to listening to the answers that are given. When we are in a situation, in a system that focuses so much on facts handed down, facts memorized, our ability to question diminishes. Our inclination to observe diminishes. Our ability to question diminishes. And our ability to listen to an answer also diminishes, as does our ability to listen to a question, because a question that makes you confront yourself that maybe you don't know the answer to this. And you're in your comfort zone of handing out facts. So you don't want someone questioning where you don't know the answer, and you have to own up and say, I don't know the answer. And that's an uncomfortable position for you to be, because you're used to giving out facts. For the person who's listening, things are being handed down as facts. It is this, it is this, it is this, it is this. And you don't have to think, you don't have to explore, you don't have to wonder, is that really so? Can't it be something different? That when you hear an answer or an approach that forces you to think, you're uncomfortable. So for the listener wants to hear answers that are short, direct. I don't have to think, I can just take it, and that's it, enough. Don't make me think. The questioner says, whatever I feel, I know it's a fact. I'll tell that to you and just take it. Don't ask me anything further. It's not a fault of the person asking the question. It's not a fault of the person giving the answer. It's not a fault of anything. It's become a habit. It's become a habit because we have been used to what I call as a fact education, which is as good as a factory education, but which does not encourage you to observe what's around you, think over what's there around you, question, and listen. A good way to illustrate this is for you to just look around your room, not depending on what educational level you're at and what your backgrounds are. Look around your room and think over all the things that are there in your room. and think over whether you have ever made the connect between any of the subjects that you have learned in school or college with the things that are in it. Except, of course, for the textbooks and the resources that you use for your learning. But other than that, have you ever made a connect with something like physics? Is there chemistry happening in your room? Is there biology in your room? How about mathematics? How about geometry? How about algebra? How about even the geography of your room? Like if you say Vastu Shastra, how about the northeast part of your room? How about history? Is there a language that runs around in your room? Have you ever made that connect? Have you ever observed? Have you ever observed carefully to see what is normal? And the reason I'm bringing this up is if you are not trained, if you are not looking carefully at observing what is normal, it's very, very difficult to find out what's abnormal. To know the abnormal, you have to know the normal. And to know the normal, you have to observe. You have to observe it. That is an area that we have to get. That is a crucial area in healthcare, in any discipline, the power to observe. And after you observe, then comes the questions. Why? Now, for most parts, we tend to ask questions only on the highly abnormal things. We don't usually ask questions on the normal things because by default, everyone knows the normal. Everyone knows everything about it. So to ask a question on the normal is, no, that's a silly thing. There is nothing to ask. We won't look intelligent. Let's ask on the most exotic thing while we don't know the normal thing. This process of observation, of asking questions, of listening, analyzing the answers, applying the answers, that is a process that has to be built as a habit, and you have to build that habit early in the education system. If we are looking to build a culture of research during 3 years of post-graduation of healthcare studies, that is completing 10 years of schooling, 2 years of intermediate college, 5 years of 5.5 years of undergraduation, a year of house urgency or residency, and then after all that, if you're trying to do that, you're starting at the wrong time. And even there, when you then further split it as research as your thesis and clinical practice is separate, you're losing further time. So the process of scientific temper, to have it in the constitution that every citizen must build that habit, but to not start inculcating that from the very early schooling days. It's not going to happen. There's no switch there. Let's not look at miracles where you put a switch on and today I am a researcher. You put that switch off, today I am a clinician. No. It's scientific temper is a way of life. And it's a way of life. And what I'm talking is not restricted to health. It applies to everything that we routinely do in life. Scientific temper is a way of life that has to be applied to everything that we do. If I want to buy a smartphone, if I want to buy a new laptop, there is a process of observation. I've seen other people use it. I'm basing my own experience of having used something. I'm looking around and observing how different systems have different configurations. There's a process of questioning where I'm comparing, does this give this, does this give that, can I do this? Maybe I will actually work on something. There's a process of listening to what others are saying about their experiences with it. scientific number is being used for every purpose that we have. So three important steps that we have missed. Very important 3 steps. That doesn't need big budgetary allocations. That doesn't need huge overhauls of systems and building huge buildings and departments and resources and all those things. Nothing. Improve the power of observation. Not just the power of observation, but actually using your senses to test it out. Tactile senses, touch it, see it, hear it, smell it, maybe even taste it. We have the senses to help with our observation. Asking questions. It doesn't cost much to ask a question. Asking questions to right people, asking questions to wrong people. Every answer gives you something to learn, and listening with an open mind rather than waiting for a premeditated answer. These 3 things have to change if healthcare research in India or any research in India has to really flourish. And then communication starts flowing back and forth because the questions come and the answers come, and then we learn how to debate respectfully, we learn how to listen to viewpoints, we learn how to take things from it, we learn how to apply it. And then we can slowly find that we don't really have to allocate separate sections or separate times or separate streams for research, because research is a way of life then. And every moment of time, whatever we are doing in healthcare, we are going to evaluate it. We're going to document it. Think over this. Think over this. And feel free to let me know what you feel about it. We'll see you next Sunday. Till then, stay safe, be happy, take care.